All right, so earlier today, we talked about Alabama against Cincinnati and some of the things to look forward to in that game. But since that time, Nick Saban and Bill O'Brien have talked and laid praise at the feet of some freshman wide receiver, and this is big for a few reasons, and we've got to talk about it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you, and earlier I asked if you thought Bryce Young would have a big game against the Cincinnati secondary. But with the news coming from Bill O'Brien and Nick Saban, do you believe a true freshman wide receiver will show out against the Bearcats? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all of that being said, we've got a lot to unpack here. And so let's hop right into it. And when Bill O'Brien and Nick Saban were talking, three freshman wide receivers were mentioned. First and foremost, Jojo Earle, the slot receiver out of the state of Texas. Jojo Earle has a ton of upside. He's an individual with incredibly fast stop and go, and that sort of ability makes him someone that defenses must respect, especially out of that slot position. Because anytime he touches the football, he's got the playmaking ability to really make a defense pay. This is someone who Nick Saban had very high praise of when Jojo Earle initially joined the team. Nick Saban was hyper impressed with Earle, and because of that, he is absolutely a name we need to keep an eye on. Furthermore, he was someone who was just mentioned as an all-freshman SEC member, and that's something we need to watch out for because he has got a ton of upside. And with him in the slot, if Alabama is able to run the football, which we talked about in the video earlier, Alabama should look to run the football, take advantage of that, get Cincinnati to stack the box, play man across the board, and then Alabama can exploit matchups on the outside. If they're able to do that, Jojo Earle could be an utter mismatch and one we have absolutely got to keep an eye on. He has a ton of fun to watch. I had the ability to watch him play in high school, and he always was hyper impressive. But he was not the only freshman wide receiver that was mentioned, because Jacorey Brooks was also mentioned, the five-star wide receiver coming out of high school. He was a part of the Alabama wide receiver class that I keep talking about as so impressive. He, Christian Leary, Jojo Earle, Ajay Hall, all individuals who I think have unbelievable upside, but were also rated as 4 of the top 10 wide receivers in the nation in last year's cycle. Whenever you're able to get 40% of the top 10 wide receivers in high school football, you gotta feel real good about yourself, and that's what Alabama did. Jacorey Brooks is already a name in the Alabama fan base because of the catch he had in the Auburn game to send the Crimson Tide to overtime. So he's already someone that has made a play in the biggest moment, or at least at that point, the biggest moment in his young career. He has got a ton of upside, a big body wide receiver who's incredibly physical. He's someone who can get up and go get the ball. With him on the field, Alabama has plenty of options in the size department, but he's also a sneaky fast guy. And he's not the fastest guy on Alabama's team, but Jamison Williams takes that crown, but that's nothing to be ashamed about. Jamison Williams is probably one of the fastest guys in the nation, but Jacorey Brooks has a ton of upside, so he's another name I was very excited to hear mentioned. And finally, one that I know will excite the Alabama fan base, Ajay Hall. Ajay Hall burst onto the scene in A-Day, and he did a bit of everything. He's got the frame to go up and get balls. He's a physical wide receiver and a really large catch radius, and he put it all on display in A-Day. And Nick Saban even told Kirk Herbstreit during A-Day that Ajay Hall was one of the most explosive players they had on the roster. And anytime you can combine that size, that frame, that catch radius, the catchability and explosiveness, man, that's a receiver that really has the total package, and sky really is the limit. Now, many of us expected to see much more of Ajay Hall throughout the year, but for whatever reason, that did not come to fruition. However, Bill O'Brien and Nick Saban talked about how Ajay Hall has impressed here recently, and he's been improving in practice. If he's able to burst onto the scene, what better time to do it than a college football playoff game? He has got a lot of ability. He's someone that the Crimson Tide fan base has been wanting to see for quite some time because what we saw during A-Day left a lot of people really excited because it's very apparent the upside this young man has. So whenever you hear about 3 freshman wide receiver impressing, that's always good news, especially when you're in a situation where one of your 2,000-yard wide receivers went down due to injury. You still have Jameson Williams, and I said earlier in the video that's more of the preview Alabama against Cincinnati. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. I talked earlier in that game that Cincinnati's secondary has been phenomenal this year, but they've yet to face a wide receiver like Jameson Williams. But if you can get some of these true freshmen involved, it's going to be very hard to stop this Alabama receiving corps, especially if they can get Cincinnati to stack the box, play man across the board. I think Alabama's in for some mismatches, not only out the slot with Jojo Earle, but the tight ends are something I think we need to watch out for. So all in all, I'm very interested in hearing from y'all. With the 3 Alabama freshman wide receivers mentioned, who do you think we could see have a big game come the playoff game? All 3 of these guys are individuals that really excite the Alabama fan base, and I can't wait to see what they do. That's it. See ya.